This is a forgotten TV focus, the tragic death of Jon-Erik Hexum, part of a consideration of the 1982 NBC TV series, Voyagers, coming soon to this podcast feed. I am your host, Chris Cooling. Hexum had saved much of the $200,000 he had earned on his season of Voyagers, and proceeded to buy himself a modest house in Burbank, but held on to his '81 Pontiac and, of course, his '54 Chevy Bel Air. The same day the final Voyagers episode aired, Hexum began filming the Aaron Spelling-produced ABC TV movie, The Making of a Male Model, with Joan Collins. He had auditioned for the role 5 times, but it was a screen test with Collins that cinched it. Spelling gave Hexum a $9,000 budget to take to Rodeo Drive and get outfitted with a new wardrobe. Hexum knew exactly what kind of TV movie this was, saying at the time, "It's a bit trashy, but what the hell. If it's terrible, I'll hit the road and get another job." Following filming on Male Model, Joan Collins was intent on getting Hexum cast as a new character on Dynasty. Since the role came along with a 3-year commitment, Hexum declined to even read for the part, and the character of Dex Dexter went to Michael Nader. Initially scheduled during November sweeps, Hexum went all out to time publicity appearances on talk shows and photo shoots for magazines to promote the movie. This was sabotaged by ABC when they inexplicably moved it up a month to air on Columbus Day weekend. Not discouraged, Hexum optimistically started his own production company, J.E. Hexum Productions, and began to take meetings and look at possible scripts to produce. He bought his mom Greta a townhouse condo in the nearby neighborhood of Selmar and hired her as his personal assistant. He also kept very busy with 5 acting lessons and 3 workouts a week, adding improv and jazz dancing classes, all while getting his nightly 8 hours of sleep. But it turned out that Male Model performed quite well despite the holiday weekend. And if he wasn't already recognized as such, Hexum was now a TV hunk, and roles would follow. He was invited to appear on Aaron Spelling's Hotel without even needing to audition. Audiences saw a more dramatic side to Hexum in his supporting role on The Bear, a 1984 period film about the life of football coach Paul Bryant. However, most of Hexum's scenes ended up getting cut from the final film. But TV opportunity knocked again when Hexum was offered the lead in a new Glenn Larson TV pilot, offering him script approval as well as creative input on how his image was used. Hexum was finally coaxed to sign one of those multi-year commitments he had previously avoided. A music video-style presentation reel was shot at Larson's jungle-looking Hawaii compound, which featured Hexum toting an M16 through the jungle. CBS ordered a pilot based on this pitch reel before a script had even been written. Jennifer O'Neill, known for her role in Summer of '42, was cast to star opposite Hexum, as well as Richard Anderson, familiar to fans of The $6 Million Man. Originally titled Harper's Bazaar, magazine Harper's Bazaar threatened legal action and insisted the title be changed. Eventually, O'Neill suggested Cover Up, an inside joke referring to her days as a model for CoverGirl Cosmetics. When the music clearances to use Bonnie Tyler's hit Holding Out for a Hero were deemed far too expensive, Hexum's new girlfriend Elizabeth, also known as E.G. Daly, was tapped to provide a cover version. Daly would play Dottie on Pee-wee's Big Adventure the following year, and would later have quite a career as a voice actor on Rugrats and other animated productions. Typical of action-adventure series of this era, covers of popular hit songs would often be heard in the subsequent series. After viewing a rough cut of the pilot film, CBS ordered a series for the fall of 1984, and the pilot was shown to TV critics in June, to largely negative reviews. However, the movie pilot debuted to great ratings when aired in September, and the show was slotted on Saturdays at 9 p.m. Central. Hexum played Mac Harper, a former Special Forces soldier recruited by fashion photographer Danny Reynolds after she discovered her murdered husband was an undercover CIA agent. Being run by her dead husband's CIA handler, Reynolds and Harper would be sent to exotic locations while posing as a photographer-model team, with the ultimate goal of tracking down her husband's killers. Ratings dropped following the pilot. In addition, producers Brian Lane and Glenn Larson had disagreed over the tone and series direction very early on, resulting in Lane leaving the show. Larson decided a shift to lighten the tone of stories was needed, so Bob Shayne, co-creator of WizKids, was brought on to write for the series. Shayne's first script, Harpergate, a Hitchcockian homage in which Hexum's character was on the lam wanted for murder, was liked enough by Larson that it earned him the role of co-producer. Meanwhile, Hexum was offered to be featured on Circus of the Stars, and he began weeks of training for a high-wire act involving early morning or late evening sessions outside of his 15-hour workday on Cover-Up. The taping of this tightrope act was scheduled for October 13th in Las Vegas. It was on filming of Shayne's third episode, Golden Opportunity, that tragedy struck. Because previous stories had been thrown out due to the tonal change, Shayne needed to deliver a script in 2 days. So Shayne fell back on a frequent Larson practice of reusing a story from a prior series. In this instance, an episode from Larson's earlier series, Switch, titled The Old Diamond Game. Shayne was quite familiar with the story, having adapted the script before on Sword of Justice, Simon and Simon, and it almost got used on The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo. However, Shayne was given network notes on this rewrite, telling a Hexum fan page, "An asshole at the network insisted the script was too soft and needed to be more violent. Of course, they never used that word. The code word is action. It needed more action. Bullshit. That meant violence. So I devised the whole con within the con, where John pretends to shoot McKelty. If the network asshole hadn't pressed me, that scene wouldn't have been in the script, and the gun wouldn't have been in Jon-Erik's hand." A note about prop guns and blanks. As may have been made evident by several high-profile on-set accidents, the guns used in filming scenes where they are fired are often real weapons, though they can be altered to fire only blanks. The gun in Hexum's scene was a .44 Magnum with a sawed-off barrel, which had the visual effect of making it look less dangerous and resemble a snub-nosed .22 revolver. Dummy rounds are what they sound like, casings with the appearance of real bullets, but they are not live rounds. These are used for visual effect when it is necessary to see bullets on screen, but they do not need to be fired. Blanks use real gunpowder to facilitate firing the cartridge, and these are often loaded with a half or two-third charge of gunpowder, tamped down with a wad of paper, cotton, or wax, and closed with a visually distinct crimp. Blanks are used when it is needed to see the weapon firing on screen, complete with a muzzle flash and sound of gunfire. Although there is no bullet, the wadding, as well as whatever material may be in the gun barrel, is propelled out at great speed by explosive gases, caught on camera as a bright muzzle flash. Due to the danger of this ejecta, protective glass is often used to cover camera lenses. Crew members may wear eye protection, and blanks are not usually fired directly at another actor, with deceptive camera angles used to conceal this. In the story, Hexum as Mac shoots guest actor McKelty Williamson with blanks as part of a con game in a scene that takes place on location at a rocky beach in San Pedro. An additional soundstage scene needed to be filmed the following day that takes place earlier in the script, where Mac is in a hotel room and prepares for the staged killing by switching out real bullets for blanks. It was October 12th, the 5th day of episode filming, and due to one logistical reason after another, there were repeated delays, and the scene was taking excessively long to film. In the 52-second scene, Hexum as Mac was to sit on the edge of the bed and in a close-up load his own manufactured blanks into the revolver before guest actor Dick Durock arrives to take Mac to the hit. The same revolver had been used the day before at the beach where it was fired at McKelty Williamson. Why actual blanks filled with a 2/3 gunpowder charge were used in the scene is not known, nor why the prop master left the revolver with Hexum during the extended delays in filming. The exhausted and frustrated Hexum was due to fly to Vegas with girlfriend Elizabeth that evening for the next day's filming on Circus of the Stars. After a 15-minute nap, the scene was still not ready to film. It was now 5:15 p.m. According to reports, Hexum exclaimed, "Can you believe this crap?" What exactly happened next is unclear due to varying accounts. Some say he sat on the bed, emptying and reloading the revolver, or sat spinning the gun around on his index finger. One witness claimed he loaded one blank and spun the cylinder, snapping it shut, as one might do during Russian roulette. But this contradicts later findings that there were 2 blanks and 3 dummy rounds in the gun. What the majority of witnesses report happened next was Hexum announcing, "Let's see if I've got one for me." Hexum then raised the gun to within an inch of his right temple, made a funny face, and squeezed the trigger. After the shot rang out, the set exploded in pandemonium. A crew member ran to the Fall Guy stage next door for help. Former Marine Dick Durock put his finger in Hexum's mouth to open his airway, while another crew member wrapped his head in a towel. A stagehand turned a prop door into a stretcher, and within a minute, Hexum was loaded into the back of a studio station wagon, and he was raced to the small Beverly Hills Medical Center a mile away. After a 5-hour surgery, doctors made their grim findings. The wadding of the blank had smashed into his skull, with enough force to break off a quarter-sized piece of bone and drive it 6 inches into his brain. He was sedated into a medically induced coma and placed on a ventilator. The initial announcements made seemed more optimistic than the reality of the situation warranted, and many expressed hopes for some kind of recovery. Co-star Jennifer O'Neill had been in her trailer when the shooting occurred. "My initial reaction was, 'Oh, he'll be fine.' It was a very difficult thing to digest. I just didn't want to think he wouldn't be anything but all right. I do remember I went to see him the following Tuesday at the hospital, and I felt he wasn't there. That's when I knew he was gone." Meanwhile, police investigated the set and quickly ruled the shooting accidental. Cover-Up was, of course, on a production hiatus without its lead actor. With only 2 episodes in the can, a decision had to be made soon on how to proceed. As the planned ending was scrapped, Bob Shayne rewrote the conclusion, and a body double, voice impersonator, and creative editing were used to complete the episode. As Shayne later commented, "Ironically, the episode came out rather well. Except, of course, it had a complete pall over it because of Hexum's death." A week after the accident, the news hit that Hexum was considered brain dead, and discussions began regarding organ donation. Back at the studio, auditions for Hexum's replacement had already begun. Among those considered were Miles O'Keefe, Jack Scalia, and model Rick Edwards. Anthony Hamilton, the actor who had beat Hexum out of the role, for Samson and Delilah was finally chosen, who would step in as new character Jack Stryker. The opening segment was refilmed with Hamilton, almost shot for shot, and Hexum's character was written out with a single line: "Mac's not coming back." The first day of filming on Hamilton's initial episode involved a stuntman firing a gun on screen. Production ramped up to 7 days a week to catch up, and the show went on. Producers did add a poetic coda at the conclusion of Hexum's episode, read by Richard Anderson, but they failed to spell his first name correctly on screen. Jon-Erik Hexum's respirator was turned off on October 19th, with his mother Greta and brother Gunnar at his side. He was 26 years old. Hexum's organs went on to help several people: a 37-year-old man who had heart damage from a viral infection, a 5-year-old boy, and 43-year-old wife and mother, both in need of kidneys, a 20-year-old man with an eye injury, a 66-year-old man with cataracts, and a 3-year-old boy who had suffered terrible burns from a fire. Hexum's ashes were spread by his mother Greta in the ocean near Point Doom, where scenes for the Voyagers pilot were filmed. Per the wishes of the family, there was no official funeral. It was requested that instead of flowers, donations could be made to Handgun Control, Inc., the organization started by James Brady. That November, Hexum and Jennifer O'Neill were featured on the cover of Playgirl magazine, as Hexum had previously done an interview. The unfortunate title: Cover-Up star Jon-Erik Hexum, TV's sexiest body, bears his mind. It had been too late to stop the presses to reword it. The following July, Greta and Gunnar Hexum filed a lawsuit against Fox Television, Glenn Larson Productions, and director Sidney Hayers, alleging negligence and that Hexum had not received proper training in the handling and use of prop firearms. The suit was later settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. In the wake of Hexum's death, ABC began printing warnings at the bottom of their call sheets for shows like T.J. Hooker, and accountability for the handling of prop weapons was stepped up. The Screen Actors Guild formed a committee to conduct their own investigation into the shooting. They found there had been 2 prior incidents on Cover-Up where crew members had been injured by fired blanks. Sadly, the Hexum death was not the last incident that highlighted the potential dangers of firearms on film sets. Less than 9 years later, Brandon Lee died on the set of The Crow when a fired blank propelled a dummy round that had previously become lodged in the gun barrel into the abdomen of the actor. In a much more complicated incident on the set of Rust in 2021, live ammunition was discharged by a revolver held by Alec Baldwin, injuring director Joel Souza and killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Today, Hexum's cenotaph can be seen at Valhalla Memorial Park in North Hollywood, which reads, Jon-Erik Hexum, 11/5/57 to 10/18/84. Forever in the hearts of your friends and fans. Thank you for joining me for this Forgotten TV focus on the death of Jon-Erik Hexum, part of a full podcast coming soon on Voyagers. Forgotten TV is not affiliated with or authorized by any production company or network involved in the making of any TV show or film mentioned in this podcast. Audio clips included are for the purposes of historical context, review, commentary, and criticism only, and are not intended to infringe. Audio came courtesy of YouTube channels SF in the City, David Gideon, Collegia Sound 80, Canuck 21, Mager Munson. Quotes and background information came from the following sources. The book, The Show Must Go On, How the Deaths of Lead Actors Have Affected Television Series by Douglas Snauffer. Bob Shayne's Cover-Up Memories at the Jon-Erik Hexum Remembrance page, as well as the fully referenced 4-part series on Jon-Erik Hexum by Brian Hartigan on his podcast, Dark Tube, TV's Wicked History, linked in the show notes. Thank you for listening. I am your host, Chris Cooling, and this has been Forgotten TV.